بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الناصح الأمين. اللهم صل على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين. ثم أما بعد، يا عباد الله، قال العلامة الإمام شيخ بن باز رحمه الله تعالى: فإن وصيتي لكل مسلم تقوى الله عز وجل في جميع الأحوال، وأن يحفظ لسانه عن جميع الكلام إلا كلاما تظهرت فيه المصلحة. Imam bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that my advice, my strong advice to every Muslim is to have fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, to have fear of Allah Azza wa Jal in every situation, and to protect their tongue, to safeguard their tongue from all speech except for that speech that it becomes apparent that there is therein a benefit. The Imam rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, لأنه قد ينجر الكلام المباح إلى حرام أو مكروه. He said, and this is because the speech that is mubah, that is okay, it can turn to speech that is haram or speech that is hated. وَذَلِكَ كَثِيرٌ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. And this is a lot amongst the people, that they start off speaking about something la bats bih, that there's no problem with it, and then it goes on and it enters into that which is problematic. It transforms into that which is haram, or that which is makruh, that which is hated. وقال الله عز وجل, and Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. Allah Ta'ala, He says what means, and not a single statement is uttered except that there is one who is raqibun atid. There is one who is watching and one who is ready to write it down. There's one who is observing. There's one who is vigilant, ready to write it down. وقال تعالى, and Allah Ta'ala, He says, لا تقف ما ليس لك به علم, and do not follow that in which you have no knowledge about. إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا. Allah Ta'ala, He says what means, because verily the hearing, the seeing, and the heart, all of them they will be questioned. All of them they will be questioned. So don't follow that which you don't have no knowledge about. Don't speak about that which you don't have no knowledge about. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم في الحديث متفق عليه. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said in a hadith that has been agreed upon its authenticity by Imam al-Bukhaari and Imam Muslim rahimahumullah ta'ala. And Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر من كان يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever believes in Allah and the last day, then let him speak good or be quiet. Whoever believes in Allah and the last day, then let him speak good or let him be quiet. وقال إمام بن باز رحمه الله تعالى وهناك أشياء قد يجرها الكلام ينبغي التنبيه عليها. He said that there's some things that come across in this speech that we have to draw the attention to. We have to make you aware of them. وَالتَّحْذِيرْ مِنْهَا, and we have to warn you from them. لِكَوْنِهَا مِنَ الْكَبَائِرِ, because they are from the major sins. استمعوا, because they are from the major sins. التي توجب غضب الله وأليم عقابه, because they are that which are one from the major sins. They are that which too they will subject an individual to the anger of Allah. And for three, because they will subject an individual to the tremendous and painful torment, chastisement and punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal. وَقَدْ فَشَّتْ فِي بَعْضِ الْمُجْتَمِعَاتِ, and you find that this has become widespread in some of the communities. It's become widespread in some of the societies. وَمِنْ هَذِهِ الْأَشْيَاءِ, and from these things, الْغِيبَةِ, and from these things is backbiting. Backbiting. وَهِيَ ذِكْرُ أَخَاكَ, and it is to mention your brother. It is to mention your brother or your sister. بِمَا يَكْرَأُهُ لو بلغ ذلك. It is to mention your brother or your sister with that which they will not like it, they will hate it, they will have a disdain for it if it was to be made known to them what you said about them. سواء ذكرته بنقص في دينه, regardless of whether you mention something that was related to a deficiency inside of his religion, أو نسبه, or some type of mentioning in a bad manner as related to his lineage, أو خلقه, or his character, أو فعله, or his action, أو قوله, or his statement, أو في دينه, or as relates to his religion, أو دنياه, or as relates to his worldly affairs. بل, the Imam says, بل حتى في ثوبه وداره ودابته, even when it is into that, is saying something distasteful about his thobe, about his clothes, or about his residence, his house, or about his riding animal or his vehicle. To say something disdainful about any of these things behind his back, that if it were to reach him or if it were to reach her, it is that which they won't be pleased about, that which they won't like, then this is ghibah. This is backbiting. This is backbiting. فَعَنْ أَبِي هُرَيْرَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَنْهُ, on the authority of Abu Hurairah رضي الله تعالى عنه, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أتدرون ما الغيبة؟ قالوا الله ورسوله أعلم. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ذكرك أخاك بما يكره. قال أفرأيت إن كان في أخي ما أقول؟ فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن كان فيه ما تقول فقد اغتبته وإن لم يكن فيه ما تقول فقد بهته. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, what translated means, he asked the Sahaba, he said, do you know what backbiting is? To which they responded, they said, Allah and His Messenger know best. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, it is to mention about your brother that which he don't like. So they asked, and what, or have you not seen, or what if what we're saying about him is true? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, if what you're saying about him is true, then verily you have backbitten him. You have backbitten him. And if what you said about him is not true, then you have launched an extremely heinous accusation against him. Then you would have slandered him. You would have launched a tremendous heinous slander against him. Hadithun Sahih Rawahu Muslim. This hadith is authentic and is collected by Muslim. وَالْغِيبَةِ مُحَرَّمَةِ, Ghiba is haram. It's haram. وَمِنْ كَبَائِرِ, and it is from the major sins. The Imam, he says, لِأَيِّ سَبَبٍ مِنَ الْأَسْبَابِ, despite the reason, because people, they try to bring reasons and justifications of why they said what they said. The Imam, he mentions, he said, despite the reason, and then he brings as an example some of the reasons that the people they mention, some of the justifications that the people they mention. He says, سواء كانت لشفاء الغيظ, he said, regardless of whether it is to alleviate someone's anger, because sometimes people in trying to cheer people up, when they start to backbite the people that the one who they trying to cheer up is mad at. So regardless of whether it's trying to cheer up a person or to try to alleviate anger, أو مجالمة للجلساء والمساعدتهم على الكلام, or whether it's to bring joy to the people that you're sitting with and to help them along with the speech. You know how it is. People ain't got sitting around and got nothing to talk about. This one comes with his evil intention. He start backbiting people, trying to liven up the occasion, liven up the sitting and so on and so forth, bring joy to those who he's with. Or if it's a person, he's trying to act. He's acting something out. Now he's acting something out. Actors and actresses, they are liars. Actors and actresses, they are liars. So if a person, he start acting something out, imitating his brother in a way in which he knows his brother won't like, mocking his brother in a way in which he knows his brother won't like. This is haram. This is from ghiba. This is from ghiba. Doing impressions of his brother or her sister. This is from ghiba. Or hasad, or because the motivation is jealousy and envy. Or la'ab, or because he's just playing around. Or al-hazad, or because he's trying to ridicule and poke fun of. Or tamshiyat al-waqt, or to let the time go by. فَيَذْكُرُ عُيُوبَ غَيْرَهُ, and then he mentions the faults and shortcomings of other than him. بِمَا يُضْحَكُ, with that which make people laugh, that which bring about laughter. This is haram. It is not permitted. None of these are valid excuses for the likes of this. Ghiba is haram and it's from the major sins. وَقَدْ نَهَى اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ عَنْهَا, and Allah Azza wa Jalla, He has prohibited backbiting. وَحَذَّرَ مِنْهَا, and He has warned from it. حَذَّرَ مِنْهَا عِبَادَهُ, He has warned His slaves from it. في قوله عز وجل يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه فاتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم. Allah Ta'ala says what means, O you who believe, stay away from much suspicion, because verily some suspicion is sin, and do not spy upon one another, and do not backbite one another. Do one of you love that you will eat the dead flesh of your brother? Do one of you love that he will eat his brother's dead flesh? But rather you will detest it. Rather you will hate such a thing. Rather you will deem such a thing to being disgusting. Fattaqullah. So therefore fear Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has likened backbiting to the eating of dead flesh. And bila shak wa bila rayb, the eating of dead flesh is haram and it's from the kaba'ir. It is haram and it's from the major sins. So therefore that which is likened to it is that which is similar to it in its ruling. So that ghiba is likened to the eating of dead flesh, which is haram and from the major sins, because ghiba itself is haram and from the major sins. Allah Ta'ala, He says, so therefore fear Allah. Fear Allah. Verily Allah is the one who accepts repentance. He is the one who is all forgiving. وفي حديث عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه, and it comes in a hadith on Abu Hurairah رضي الله تعالى عنه, that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, كل المسلم على المسلم حرام, all of the Muslim is prohibited upon the Muslim, دمه وماله وعرضه, his money, his blood and his honor. حديث صحيح رواه مسلم. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم في خطبته في الحج الوداع, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said in his farewell pilgrimage, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إن دماءكم وأموالكم وأعراضكم حرام عليكم كحرمة يومكم هذا في شهركم هذا في بلدكم هذا. The Prophet ﷺ, he said what translated means, and that verily your blood and your money and your honor, all of it is haram upon you, like the sanctity of this day and the sanctity of this month and the sanctity of this land, of this city. Hadith Sahih Muttafaqun alayh. This hadith is authentic. It has been agreed upon its authenticity by Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahimahumullah ta'ala. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أربى الربا استمعوا يا عباد الله. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من أربى الربا استطالة المرء في عرض أخيه. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and from the most outrageous types of interest, from the most outrageous types of interest, from riba, from the most outrageous types of riba, استطالة المرء في عرض أخيه, is a person excessively going beyond the bounds as relates to the honor of his brother. As relates to the honor of his brother. Again, the Prophet ﷺ, or another example and illustration, the Prophet ﷺ, he likened ghiba to riba. And riba is from the kaba'ir. It is from the major sins, bila shak wa bila rayb. Taking interest, taking forms of usury, it is from the major sins. Paying forms of usury, paying interest, this is from the major sins, with no doubt about that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he likened it to what? To riba, but rather he said min arba riba, from the most heinous and from the most excessive types of interest is what? Is that an individual, he excessively expounds upon in a negative manner the character or the honor of his brother. والأحاديث الثابتة عن الرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في التحريم الغيبة وذمها والتحذير منها كثيرة جدا. And the ahadith that come mentioning the prohibition of ghiba and the prohibition or the blaming of it and the warning from it, then verily there are many. Verily there are many. There are many indeed. But it has to be a tanbih right here. Because you have people who play around with the usul of the deen. People who play around with the usul of the deen, they make tashwish. They'll come and they say, but there are examples or there are exceptions to this. And they try to use that exception and turn the exception into the norm. Turn the exception into the rule. To make people have no thought or pay it no mind or attention when it comes to backbiting people. Entering upon the reputations and the honors of individuals and the like, infringing upon their honors and their right. So they play games. So we want to make it clear. كما قال العلامة الشيخ محمد بن هادي المدخلي حفظه الله تعالى التحذير من أهل الباطل ليس من هذا الباب. That warning against the people of falsehood is not entering into this subject matter. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about other than that. So you can't come and say, but you can talk about and you can warn from the innovator and warn from the person who's spreading evil and falsehood and so on and so forth. And then they use that and then they start to warn against the people of the Sunnah. Speak bad about the people of the Sunnah. Make ghiba against Ahlul Sunnah. Because they're playing around, they're playing games. We ain't talking about that. We're not talking about warning against the people of innovation. We're not talking about warning against the people of falsehood. We're not talking about that. We're talking about that which is less than that which is other than that. We're talking about something totally different, ya ibadallah. And you know what it is. Do not backbite your brothers. Do not backbite your sisters. Fear Allah as it relates to your tongue. Fear Allah as it relates to the honor and the reputations of your brothers and your sisters. Do not speak about your brother and your sister behind their back except with that which they love. هذا أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. قال إمام رحمه الله تعالى إمام بن باز رحمة الله عليه ومما ينبغي اجتنابه وابتعاد عنه والتحذير منه النميمة. And then verily from that which we have to stay away from and we have to distance ourselves and be far removed from it and we have to warn from it, then verily it is slander. It is slander. التي هي نقل الكلام من شخص إلى آخر. That which is to bring speech from one person to another, transmit it from one to another, أو من جماعة إلى جماعة, or from one group to another group, أو من قبيلة إلى قبيلة, or from one tribe to another tribe. لقصد الإفساد بينهم, with the intention of making problems amongst them. Taking speech because you want to separate between loved ones, because you want to make trouble, because you want to stir up things, because you want to make conflict. وَهِيَ كَشْفُ مَا يَقْرَأُهُ كَشْفُ, and it is to expose that which hate to be exposed. سواء أقرأه منقول عنه أو منقول إليه, regardless on whether it is hated by the one that you're speaking about or the one who you're speaking to. أو كرهه ثالثا, or if it's hated by a third party. سواء كان ذلك كشف بقول, and this is regardless of whether it is the exposing by way of a speech, a statement, أو كتابة, or by way of writing, texting, posting, whatever, all enters into that. Or rums, or is it because by some type of gesturing, as you have people make gestures and things like this, بالإيماء, or whether it's by hinting and alluding to. How people they throw their indirects. سواء كان منقول من أقوال, whether that which is being transmitted is by way of statements, أو أعمال, or by way of actions. سواء كان ذلك عيبا ونقصا في منقول عنه, regardless, as long as it is to poke fun of or to bring discrepancy or to reduce in stature or the like, the one who you're speaking about. أو لم يكن, or if it is not something that exists in them to begin with, or if it's not something that exists within them to begin with, or if you claim that that wasn't your intention to begin with. فيجب أن يسكت الإنسان عن كل ما يراه من أحوال الناس إلا ما في حكايته منفعة للمسلم ومسلمين أو دفع للشر. So it is incumbent that an individual, that a person, he is quiet about what he sees from the stations or from the situations of the people, except for that which in its transmitting then there is a benefit for the Muslim and the Muslims, or it is a repelling of evil away from the Muslims. So fear Allah, ya ibadallah, from trying to bring speech amongst people because you want to separate and you want to cause problems. You become the source of the cause of a problem because you carrying this and carrying that. And as we know from the definition of the Prophet ﷺ, as it relates to that which is namima, it is that which the Prophet ﷺ said, وَإِلَّمْ يَكُنْ فِيهِ مَا تَقُولُ فَقَدْ بَهَتَّ, and if it is not in him that which you saying, then you have slandered him. So you're spreading what? You're spreading lies. They're spreading lies. وَالْبَاعِثْ عَلَى نَمِيمَةٍ, and that which is the motivator for namima, the Imam he says, إِمَّا إِرَادَةُ السُّوءِ, is because you want to harm للمحكي عنه, you want to harm the one who you're speaking about, أو إظهار الحب للمحكي عليه, or because you're trying to show that you love the one who you're speaking to. So they start making up stories, making up lies, so as to show I'm with you, I'm in support of you, forget them, we against them, they bad and this and that. Then they start making up stuff, start adding their 2 cents, making up stuff. The Imam he says, الاستمتاع بالحديث والخوض في الفضول والباطل. He said all the motivation can be to try to liven up the speech, and so therefore they delve into false speech and erroneous speech, things that they shouldn't be talking about. وَكُلُّ هَذَا حَرَامٌ, all of these motivating factors, and they are haram. وَكُلُّ مَنْ حَمَلَتْ إليه نميمة, and anyone who the namima it is brought to them, حملت إليه نميمة, everyone who the namima, the slander is brought to them, بأي نوع من أنواعها, from any type of his types and any which way shapes of his forms, يجب عليه استمعوا, somebody brings you some slander, يجب عليك عدم تصديق, then it is upon you, it is binding upon you, don't believe it, do not believe it. لأن النمام, because the spreader of slander, the slanderer, يُعْتَبَرُ فَاسِقًا, because the slanderer is considered a fasiq. The one who spreads slander, he's considered a fasiq. The one who is thiqah, the one who is trustworthy and reliable, he don't spread slander. He don't spread false speech. He don't just narrate everything and anything that he hear from whoever he hear it from. So anybody who is a spreader and a carrier of slander, he's not thiqah. No matter who says he's thiqah, he is rather a fasiq. كما قال Imam bin Baz rahmatullah alayh. Imam, he says, لأن النمام يعتبر فاسقا مردود الشهادة. قال الله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا. Allah Ta'ala, he says what means, oh you who believe, if a criminal comes to you with information, then you have to verify it. Don't accept it, it has to be verified. Why? Because the transmitter of it is a fasiq, so it is rejected. It's an individual who his testimony is rejected. وَعَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَنْهَاهُ عَنْ ذَلِكَ, and you have to stop him from that. Naam, Ibadallah istami'u, you have to stop them from the spread of their slander. That which you know is not correct, and they saying it, or they're posting it, or they're tweeting it, or they're transmitting it, then you have to check them on that. Don't repeat it, don't retweet it, don't repost it, don't like it, don't transmit it to others and say, oh, this is what I heard. But rather you check him on that. You prevent him from that. وَيَنْصَحَهُ, and you advise him. وَيَقْبَحُ فِعْلُهُ, and you make it extremely clear of the ugly and repugnant nature of his actions. لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى, in accordance to Allah's statement, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَى عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, due to Allah's statement, and command with the good and forbid the evil. Command with the good and forbid the evil. You have to warn the likes of these individuals, ya ibadallah. The Imam, he says, وَأَنْ يُبْغِضُهُ فِي اللَّهِ, and you shall hate this person for Allah. This person who's a spreader of slander, this person who's a spreader of slander and fitna, making problems amongst the Muslims, the Imam, he says, you shall hate him for Allah. You shall hate him for Allah. وَأَلَّا يَظُنُّ بِأَخِيهِ, and do not think about your brother, and do not have any bad thoughts about your brother who is being slandered. Don't have bad thoughts about your brother who's being slandered. بل يظن به خيرا, but rather think good about him. Think good about him. لقوله تعالى, according to Allah Ta'ala's statement, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. According to Allah's statement, oh you who believe, stay away from suspicion, stay away from much suspicion, because verily some suspicion is sin. ولقوله النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, and according to the statement of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, إياكم والظن فإن الظن أكذب الحديث, and beware of suspicion, because verily suspicion is the most lying speech. Suspicion is the most lying speech. Hadithun mutafiqun alayh. Hadith is agreed upon its authenticity by Imam al-Bukhaari and Imam Muslim. So be warned, ya ibadallah, and understand the reality of those who spread slander, those who spread lie against the Muslims. Understand their reality and be vigilant over them, because you will find these type of individuals, when it comes to the spread of slander, when it comes to the spread of corruption and fitna, you'll find that they're quick to spread the fitna, they're quick to post the fitna, they're quick to text the fitna, they're quick to email out the fitna, they're quick to retweet and tweet the fitna and quote the fitna. But then when it comes to islah, when it comes to rectification, when it comes to khair, when it comes to good, when it comes to the spread of benefits, you find they become like paraplegics. You find they become paralyzed. They don't spread that. They don't talk that. When it comes to spread the kalam of the ulama, that has therein guidelines, that has therein rahmah, that has therein tawjihad, that has therein guidance for the Muslims, that has therein direction and sincere advice. They don't know nothing about that. They don't spread that. They don't tweet that. They don't post that. They don't like that. Do you know why? Because the shaitan, he is with them when they spread their fitna. When they spread their fitna, the shaitan, he's their partner. But when it comes to the good, when it comes to that which is khair, when it comes to that which will bring rectification, when it comes to that which will join the ranks of the Muslims, you find the shaitan in this hal alayhim. The shaitan is against them. He's not helping them. He's not aiding them. He's not helping them. Because the whole time they spreading their fitna, it's the shaitan who's their friend. This is the reality of the slanderer. This is the reality of those who try to cause problems amongst the believers. This is the reality of those who try to cause problems between loved ones. This is the reality of the one who tries to break up friendships. This is the reality of those who try to damage and adversely affect marriages. This is the reality of the one who spreads lies. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us from the likes of these individuals, to save us from the shaitan and the plots of the shayateen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who safeguard our tongues. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who safeguard our tongues, who fear Allah as relates to ourselves, who fears Allah as relates to our brothers, who fears Allah as relates to our sisters, who fears Allah as relates to the honor of the people, who fears Allah and those who support the truth when they see the truth, and those who fight against falsehood when they see the falsehood. هذا يا عباد فأقيموا الصلاة.